Welcome to The Wellness Way. I'd like to introduce you to our sponsor, Vivo Barefoot. Embrace your human nature and reconnect to the natural world. Get 15% off your first Vivo Barefoot order using the code PJL15. If you'd like to know more about this, please go and check out my podcast episode with 7th generation cobbler, Galahad Clark, CEO of Vivo Barefoot. Enjoy the rest of the show. Hello, lovely people, and welcome to another episode of The Wellness Way. And today I'm bringing an old friend of the show, the beautiful spiritual scientist, Susan Kennard.
So, being a scientist, I wanted evidence of everything. So I used to do research into trauma, and that's a specialism of mine. So one day, when I was in my late 20s, I had this spiritual awakening. And then at the end of the reading, bearing in mind I was a psychotherapist in child protection at the time, she looked at my hands and she said, "And by the way, you're walking the path of a master psychic." And I said, "No."
No, I'm not doing that.
No. I said, "I'm a psychologist. That's not for me." Well, you never know what your cards are, do you? Literally. My disclaimer is I'm not a doctor and I don't claim to heal or cure. And to be honest, what I believe is no one cures anyone or no one heals anyone else.
Not even a doctor.
Exactly. That we are our own holy grail. Mission changes, and I think that's an important thing to say, is that people think, well, why am I here? Well, actually, it's not just for one thing. Like, your mission and your purpose evolves and changes. Really fundamentally who we are creator beings, and that we can create our reality, not only heal our body, but heal our whole life. And I stepped out of the spiritual closet. I was no longer the psychologist in Harley Street.
Welcome to The Wellness Way with me, Philly J. Lay, a layperson's guide to your natural health systems, your very own NHS.
Hello, lovely people, and welcome to another episode of The Wellness Way. And today I'm bringing an old friend of the show. Not that she's old, but she's an old friend of the show. The beautiful spiritual scientist, Susan Kennard. Susan is also the author of a wonderful book called Awaken the Light Within Your Heart, and is currently working on her first children's book. Susan, hello and welcome back, my lovely.
Hi, Philly. It's great to be back.
Tell us what a spiritual scientist is.
I know. It's always a question. It's like an elevator talk, isn't it? So essentially, I blend the science with the spiritual. So my background is psychology, psychotherapy, neuropsychology, naturopathy, and I'm a channel for spirit. So I see spirit, I work with spirit, and I hear spirit. So I get the whole kind of collection together, and I work with the science, helping people heal.
It's quite extraordinary. Yeah. And I will tell you guys, I've worked with Susan and I get messages some mornings because when I tap, we've talked about this, I itch a lot. And Susan go, "I've got the itching, I've got this. And then we just hop on the phone together. And the information you give me is just mind-blowing. I'm just like, oh my God, of course that's what it is.
Yeah.
It is quite extraordinary. So you talk then about a very scientific background.
Yeah.
How does that move for people that haven't seen our first podcast, which I always say go back to that podcast, and it is a great podcast, but it's a Christmas episode. So if you don't want to listen to Christmas episodes now, then just explain ago. It is a while ago. Explain how you went from that background to where you are now, because it's one hell of a change.
So, being a scientist, I wanted evidence of everything. So I used to do research into trauma, and that's a specialism of mine. And so one day, when I was in my late 20s, I had this spiritual awakening. And it was where somebody came to me in the night. Now, it was an ex-boyfriend who took his life. Now, I didn't know it was him at the time, but I had this absolutely terrifying experience, which I write about in my book, actually, and where I felt like someone was like kind of pushing my shoulders. And I was in kind of like a cold sweat, but I couldn't move. And I was asleep, but not asleep. And there was this feeling that someone was definitely in the room with me. And then a few months after that, I kind of was still scared going to bed at night because I had no idea what it was, speaking to my friends about it. And someone got me a reading. And I'd never had a spiritual reading before, or tarot, or whatever they are. And the lady told me everything about Martin. I mean, she said the holidays we'd been on, everything. And she said, oh, and by the way, he's really sorry that he scared you, but he was trying to let you know that life goes on. And I was like blown away. And then at the end of the reading, bearing in mind I was a psychotherapist in child protection at the time, she looked at my hands and she said, and by the way, you're walking the path of a master psychic. And I said, no.
No, I'm not doing that.
No. I said, I'm a psychologist. That's not for me. Well, you never know what your cards are, do you? Literally. And then time goes on and I tried to disprove it. I tried to disprove that I was a medium, that I was a psychic, that I could see into the body. And I went to the College of Psychic Studies to try and disprove it. But I couldn't disprove it. And I started to know, I started to see, I could see into the body, I could see the spine, I could see what was going on, and I was like, what is this? And the teachers were saying to me, this is who we are naturally. We naturally are a soul having a human experience. And then, of course, this was a long time ago. I kind of resisted it for quite a while. I'm like that. If I get something new, I test it out for ages before I bring it out to the world. And so I sat on it for a while, but I kind of did it secretly. So I did readings for people secretly in the office, and I ended up working as a platform medium.
And when you say in the office, you were still working.
Child protection. As a trauma
child
specialist.
Protection, as a scientist.
Yeah. Researching trauma, post-traumatic stress, drugs, alcohol, you name it, domestic abuse. I was working with trafficked children. I was doing all that stuff. And I was living a parallel life. So that was how it kind of started. Yeah.
Gosh, it's quite traumatic, really, isn't it? Having a spiritual awakening. It's
when you don't know, yes.
When you don't know, you know nothing about it, and you just go, "What on earth is happening to me?"
Yeah.
And I remember my first card reading. I was so shocked, and I could see absolutely everything happening, kind of going, well, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense. And then she said, and then you're going to write a book. And I went, no, I'm not. I'm dyslexic, ADHD, and I'm never writing a fucking book. And then it happened, and I don't know how. It's just, it is quite... it still astounds me how people can channel. I mean, I can channel in as much as, when I wrote my book, I channeled it. Now, you wrote your book, channeling.
I channeled it.
And there was one section, was it chapter 2 that you channeled in?
Yeah. So for 3 days, that was a full-on, 3 days of channeling. And that was the second section of my book, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, from the guides and from our ascended masters and so on, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's I know a lot of people will be thinking this is completely crazy. Because there are a lot of
Which
people
I'm quite happy about.
Okay, that's fine then.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's great because I'm such a scientist. I love it when people question things and they ask questions as well. Because to me, you don't get anywhere unless you actually question things. You expect it to be, follow the science. We've heard that quite a lot.
Haven't we just?
And, follow the science. Well, actually, why? Why do you need to follow the science? Actually, question the science. So I love it. If someone says to me, well, that's a bit weird, isn't it? You see spirit, so on. I'm like, well, yeah, it could be, couldn't it? But if we take it back to the point that we are all soul, having a human experience, and the bigger part of us is already in spirit, and we're here as well, that's when people start going, okay, kind of makes sense then. And some people choose not to expand that consciousness, and some people choose to.
It's quite wonderful when you do, and when you actually tune in to how you can do this.
Yeah.
But your work, and the reason I've asked you here today, is your work has progressed over the years, as all this work does progress. But you're now helping a lot of people with chronic disease.
Absolutely.
And, disease is dis-ease. That's what's going on in the body. Now, we're hearing an awful lot at the moment about turbo cancers, but I don't want to limit the conversation just to turbo cancers, and I know you don't, because this is
Sure.
all kinds of diseases. So could you talk to us about what you're seeing happening in the world at the moment with your clients in particular?
Yeah, essentially what I'm seeing is there's a massive fast track for people awakening. So there's this massive fast track. And what's happening is if there's something within them that is a dis-ease, meaning a chemical dis-ease, an emotional dis-ease, or a physical dis-ease, all of those together point towards somebody having to wake up. And what I find with cancer, when I work with cancer, and my disclaimer is I'm not a doctor and I don't claim to heal or cure. And to be honest, what I believe is no one cures anyone or no one heals anyone else.
Not even a doctor.
Exactly. That we are our own holy grail. And so what I have noticed is that when people have these situations in their life, whether it's cancer, whether it is something else, maybe a decision they made that's left them in a difficult situation physically or emotionally, whether it's their financial situation or their work or their relationships, it stops them for a moment or two. And on that moment or two, they question, why is this happening? And in that moment, they're like, well, I'll try that. I'll try the drugs, especially with PTSD as well. I've worked with veterans and post-traumatic for a long time. And it's like, well, let's try the drugs first, because that's what we're conditioned into thinking. Let's find a fix. And when the drugs don't work, as the song suggests, we have to actually go within. And we have to question, why is my body showing me this picture? And it is a picture because it's something that's out of alignment. This is my opinion and the work that I've done. When I notice people are out of alignment with their truth of who they are, that's the love of who they are, what they're putting in their bodies, their perception of the world, the fears, the guilt, the shame, all of that stuff. When someone's out of alignment with the truth of who they are, which is pure consciousness, which is pure potential and expansion, their body shows them something. Now, whether that's weight, whether it's chronic disease, or whether it is an acute situation, it is always talking to you. And I truly believe, and I kind of coined this phrase, the body is the barometer for the soul. So the GPS of our soul is constantly saying, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. And our body is like, okay, I'll listen to you, but are we listening? The question is, do we listen to the aches and pains? Do we listen to these messages? So what happens is the soul says, I'm going to make it louder. Let's get louder. And what is louder? There's nothing like a diagnosis to make you listen. And that's what the soul is trying to do all the time, is talk to us.
That is just a beautiful analogy. I love that. And you're right, there's nothing louder. I mean, when I and just even when I found the tumor in my throat, even just going for the biopsies, which I wouldn't do now, but I did then. It's a scary situation to be in. I mean, so scary.
Very
and then when you get the
scary.
diagnosis, and then they say they're going to operate, and it's incredibly scary. But at the time, I didn't know that it was happening for me.
Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I started my wake-up journey quite soon after. And once you start, and it is the body just going, wake the fuck up. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
And
It is.
and that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
And we don't do that. Well, we're not taught to do that, because we are taught that there is a cut and burn solution for that, or a pill for something else, or
Or let's fight it.
yeah, let's fight it.
Let's battle ourselves.
Wow.
So if we're battling ourselves, what are we doing? We're creating battle within ourselves.
And more disease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that's coming to me is what you were saying there about when you found out and you had diagnosis. What I find is one of the key things to work with first with people is the shock of the news of diagnosis.
Yeah.
And secondary cancer or third cancer as well. But secondary cancer often is in a place of, the brain relays. We talk about the survival brain relay, which is the brain stem, for example. When we're looking at that, that's the lungs, that's the liver, etc. Okay, secondary cancer is often found in those places. Why is that? Because the shock of the news goes into the heart, up to the brain, and into the physical part of the body if that hasn't been healed. Isn't that interesting?
That is
so
very
we can
interesting.
do chemotherapy, we can do radiotherapy, we can do everything. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. People have to make their own choices and make their own decisions. And I quite often work with people that do both. They go on the emotional journey of releasing the trauma, but they also choose to do the medical route. And that is absolutely someone's choice. And I would never say don't, because it's not my journey, it's their journey. But what happens is secondary cancer is you need to listen a bit more because you didn't listen the first time.
Yeah.
So we might suppress it, we might get rid of it, we might cut it out, yeah? But actually the causal reason of why it's there in the first place
It's still there.
is running, if it's running, yeah? And it's usually shock and trauma and the perception of belief. And of course, on top of that, we've got what do we put in our body? Definitely pharmaceuticals can be seen, if we perceive it to be that way, as a toxicity. But we've also got the environment. We've also got the emotional toxicity, epigenetics. I know you've had lovely Bruce here, Bruce Lipton, and of course
I have
Joe
indeed.
Dispenza would be a great guy to get on here. Joe, if you're listening.
Yeah, if you're watching, Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe.
I spent a weekend with Joe in Switzerland just recently, as you know, and it was an enlightening weekend. And he talks a lot about the science of healing the body, which is all stuff that I was just absorbing because it's how I work. And, very much saying that, as we believe something, we create it. So obviously we need to change our beliefs to actually change the cellular composition, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We are self-fulfilling prophecies.
Absolutely.
It is exactly what we believe. And I have one exercise in my book, The Natural Wellness Journal, actually, where you take your limiting beliefs and you list them and then you re-imprint them and just use those as mantras to, I had a devastating email last night from a lady who I don't know, who just used my webpage and emailed me and just saying that she knew that something was happening in the world,
Right.
and she didn't know how to cope with it. And she said, I'm stupid. I'm not equipped to deal with this. And I wrote back to her and I said, no, you're not stupid. That's a limiting belief. And none of us know what we're going to have to do to be equipped for it. None of us.
Live in the moment.
No. And, even if you think, 1 in 2 of us will get cancer in our lifetime now, which is just ridiculously high. But if you think, what if I get cancer? How would I treat it? You don't actually know until you get there. And if you're thinking about it, you're already programming your body
Exactly.
to know. It's why in Japan, they don't tell old people if they have cancer. They, they just don't tell them because they're going, what's the point?
There was a great bit of research. I think it was in Switzerland. It could have been Sweden. It's one of those countries. And they stopped giving women over 50 mammograms, okay? And the breast cancer rate went down by 50%.
No.
So from a kind of sciencey perspective, what that is that when you go for your mammogram, if you choose to do that, you could be healing some emotional conflicts. And when you heal emotional conflicts, there's a cell proliferation that happens. And so if you go and you have your mammogram that day and you're healing some, relationship, with your partner or to do with your home or something like that, it could be that your breasts would show some cell proliferation, okay?
Yeah, of course.
And then you're told, well, there's a shadow on the screen, and then you're waiting for your results. So fear, more beliefs, fear. And then you're told maybe there's more cells, on that day, cell proliferation is more. And you're told that, there's another test, and then you're told you have cancer, or you're told you're not. But in that process, think about all those letters
all
and
those
conversations. So amazing that it went down by 50%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they didn't know, because they didn't have it, but they were just maybe, going through some sort of healing event. Mm-hmm.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And there are so many mistakes made with Western medicine. I mean, it's gobsmacking to me.
But people are people, okay? And doctors are just people. I've done years of training in psychology and psychotherapy. I've done probably 8, 9, 10, maybe even more years of qualifications, right?
Yeah.
And they've done years and years and years, but they're trained, with respect, they're trained in an old model. The old model is kill the disease, yeah? And the new model is love the disease.
Embrace it. Love the
Love the
disease.
cells.
Yeah.
Yeah, bring light to the cells. When I trained as a naturopath, there's an amazing woman called Barbara Wren. And she's who trained me. She was way ahead of her time. This was like 20 years ago. And she used to talk about the light within your cells. And she would say, the more light you have within your cells, the more you can hear your body. Yeah. Now she was well ahead of her time.
Yeah.
But that makes sense
Yeah.
because the more we activate our pineal gland, the more we activate that light within our brain, that center, the more we're bringing light into our cells, the more we're healing ourselves and ourselves, and the more we're connecting to that bigger part, as I talk about, the bigger part of us, that soul self, that inner guidance, that higher self, some people call it, the more we are able to listen. So then we get guided in the direction of what is healthy for us. Healthy relationships, healthy food, healthy decisions to make in our life. And we're not kind of like in this fight and flight. And unfortunately, when we go down the medical route, and once again, I'm going to say it's everyone's choice to do that. And we've all done it. We've all done it. It's only when you know what you know.
And that
you
there is an
do it.
alternative.
Yes, absolutely. So when you go down the medical route, and I'm working with several people at the moment with cancer, there's a huge fear. And the doctors will always say, I have to tell you the worst case scenario. Yeah. So instantly what you said, absolutely right, is you're constantly looping the worst case scenario.
Going, well, what if I die? What if I leave my children? What if my partner leaves me because he doesn't want to see me without one tip? What if, all these things
all that
that
stuff.
go through your mind and that grief of your old life because you think that you've just given up your old life and you now label yourself as a victim because we are taught that, if we have got dis-ease, we are a victim.
Yeah. And that's the end.
Yeah.
And that's another question, isn't it? Like when we know it isn't the end, that's also helpful to people because we know that life goes on and this is just a jacket that we're borrowing for a little while to carry our soul. But what I was going to say about the whole cancer thing, which is very interesting, is that what I notice with people is that once they start to heal those parts of them where they believed something was the truth and it wasn't the truth, they start to see the world differently. And as they start to see the world differently, they see themselves differently. And then the potential is there. And that's when they get, oh, we've got your scan and it doesn't look like you. This scan doesn't look like you. I recently had somebody who's across the world and the other side of the world and was told, just make your peace with where you are and you won't be able to travel again and this kind of thing. And they're over in England now. Literally just the last couple of days. So
I know you
it
can't
just
really
goes to
talk
show-
about patients.
No,
But
but that gives us a little bit of an idea, doesn't it?
it gives us a huge idea.
Of the, you're told something, but actually on the journey of healing yourself, you actually realise that you can heal your cells. So therefore you heal your body as well as your whole life.
Yeah. And this was a gentleman right on the other side of the world, Australia, wasn't it? Or, along, and, if you have cancer, you don't for 1 minute think you can just travel. I mean, I'd be reluctant to get on a plane and travel that far. I did it once, although I have to say my baby was very little and cried the whole way.
Yeah, that's hard.
And that was really, really hard. But
I find San Diego a bit too far for the jet lag. But
I mean, I'm kind of done with long haul, it has to be said. But, that is a massive
It just shows
achievement.
us. Yeah. Actually, a lady I can talk about, her name's Lansing. She's in my community, actually. And we met a couple of years ago. I was in San Diego at the time and had a conversation with her on the phone. And she said to me, look, I found your work. My sister found your work. Can you help me? And as I'm talking to her on the phone, I can listen. The guys are talking to me and they said, she's going to look back on this and realise why she's experienced it. And hers was secondary cancer. And she had a journey where she was healthy. She used to look after her physical body. She looked after everything. She had a great relationship. The one thing that she hadn't done was healed her childhood trauma. And she went on this journey, a beautiful journey, and she healed herself. She made a decision, her own decision, not to have radiotherapy, and that was her own. She even went to get measured for it. She even went to get measured because she was pressurized.
Yeah.
And while she was in the measuring, she heard a voice in her mind and it said, no, this isn't right. And she made her own decision. And the reason why I'm telling you this story is because a few months later, she got the complete all clear. A year later, completely clear. She's written a book. She's got a blog. She's helping people heal. And that's why she needed to experience it.
Yeah.
Because she has the journey that she can speak about, as you do, speak about your healing journey to help others realise that actually you don't have to be in this situation where you feel it's the end and that no one can help you.
Yeah,
so that's a beautiful story.
That is a beautiful story because, I think we've both trained in EFT, matrix re-imprint. Yeah. And for those of you that don't know what it is, tapping, matrix re-imprint is a little bit further than tapping. And I
used to teach EFT, years ago. I used to train people in EFT.
Yeah, you did, yeah. So, this is, it's a great emotional release, tapping on the ends of your energy meridians. But when you work in this field, you find that the majority of us that train and work in the field, we've all got there because of the trauma that we've had.
Yeah, it's interesting because I haven't, I wasn't locked in a cupboard. I didn't have a near-death experience. I didn't, a lot of people talk about all these things and I haven't had a physical illness.
Sure you weren't locked in a cupboard?
I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. But, I'm laughing about it because I'm very down to earth, as a person. But what I definitely think I shifted was coming from a place of growing up in a family that was very 3D and very much like it is what it is, and not actually thinking outside of the box. And I think I developed that by having that awakening. And I had no idea that was part of my whole soul's journey to experience all of that. But that awakening at 27 was, a cut above, really.
Tell us a little bit more about your awakening. How
I think that awakening was really amazing with Martin coming to me that night and then training at the College of Psychic Studies in, being a medium and so on. But I think another one, and we have many, right? Another one was becoming a single parent. So I remember being in a relationship that was really emotionally abusive. And I had 2 babies. So I had a little one, a really, really new little one, and I had a little, sort of 16-month-old. So they were very close together in age. And I ended up being a single parent. So can you imagine having 2 babies,
Very hard,
not knowing, and they're now 16 and nearly 17 and just 15 this weekend actually, as we're recording this, yeah. And it was a long time ago, and when I think of it, I think that was a real awakening, because I remember sitting there and making the decision that it was important for me not to have this person around the children and around me. And it was a really hard decision, because obviously a woman looking after 2 babies on their own, I didn't have much money, we were providing together. But I made that decision because there was something within me that said, this is right. And that was my GPS, my soul. And I also saw my nan who'd passed away, and I saw her kind of in my mind's eye. And I felt this sense that she was saying, yeah, you're right, this is the right thing to do. And ever since then, a big shift happened in me where I retrained in EFT, and that took me on that journey of the energy work. So I already was a psychologist and a psychotherapist, but I went down the energy line, and it made me realize that I'd attracted everything that I experienced. So I'm so grateful that I had that awakening in that sense, because I realized that I attracted that situation because of my own belief in myself. I felt that's all I was worth. It's all I was worthy of, was a relationship like that. Yeah, obviously I don't feel like that now, but that's how it was. And so I basically had another awakening where I just kind of shined. I had 2 babies to look after. I retrained. I realized who we really were, really fundamentally who we are. We are creator beings, and that we can create our reality, not only heal our body, but heal our whole life. And I stepped out of the spiritual closet.
Sorry to interrupt this podcast. The Wellness Way has got a brand new interactive ebook out. I've created a beginner's guide to your natural health systems to help you navigate through the jungle of natural health. A banquet of knowledge wrapped up in a simple ebook, featuring some of my top guests from the podcast. As an added bonus, I've even thrown in my meditation album, The Wellness Awakening, From Past Lives to Passing. Head over to my webpage, phillyjlay.com, to grab your copy now. And while you're there, why don't you sign up for my newsletter? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast so we can continue to get this information out. Remember, the doctor of your future is you.
I was no longer the psychologist in Harley Street, because I was in Harley Street for a while. I was the spiritual scientist.
I love that. I love that name.
Yeah.
Talk us through how people can start this journey if they haven't had that big wake-up call, if they haven't had, something like cancer or, a big shock to the system, but they know that there's something not quite right in the world at the moment. And I think the majority of people know there's something not quite right at this moment on this planet. How would you suggest that people could start their journey, just explore it?
Well, something that Joe says actually is Joe Dispenza says you can't create from the past or the future. You can only create from the present moment. So I believe as well that when we sit with ourselves, when we actually sit with ourselves, meaning either meditate or just sit in that space, we're actually getting to know ourselves, the true knowing of who we are. And so then what we see in the outside world is perhaps a different reflection. Yeah? So if we can see what's going on in the outside world, and we can see it, and we don't necessarily want to see it, but we don't get triggered by it, we know that we're actually going within and remembering the bigger part of who we are, which is divinity itself. If you think of what is divinity, it's big, isn't it?
It's big.
Yeah. So if you think of what this outside
Divinity
world
affinity.
is, yeah. If you think about what, this outer world is, let's call it, it's just a reflection of our inner world. Okay. And we can go to Asda is a shop. So if people are listening all over the world, Asda is a supermarket. So my analogy of Asda is, we can go into Asda, we can go right, and there's a couple and they're arguing. and they're, really not having a great time. Or we can go left and we see a couple and they're like really loving to each other and they're buying some shopping together. And it's really like, which way are you going to go? Are you going to go right or are you going to go left? And so that is a reflection of our perceptions of ourselves and the perceptions of the world. Now, that doesn't mean that things are not happening in the world. Yes, they are. And I don't watch the news, but if I were to watch the news, I would see what I'm told about the world. But I don't have that perception of it. Does that make sense?
It does. It slightly worries me though, because
That's good.
Now I don't watch the news either because obviously mainstream news is just lies.
Yeah.
But I get my information from trusted sources.
Yes, you do.
On social media
So
and email. My daughter, my eldest daughter, who I love to bits.
So do I.
She, I try and talk to her about conflicts like Palestine. And she's going, but it doesn't affect me, Mama. And the thing is that, when there is a genocide going on in the world and it's not being dealt with, that trauma is going out into the ether. We are collective. We are all one people. We are one with nature.
Yes.
So if it's out there and it's not being dealt with, I don't think we can heal the trauma.
Okay. So
We'll have
fun with
talk
this,
to me about that.
So this is how I perceive it.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get it so we can visualize it. So if we imagine that we're this beam of light, okay? So let's just imagine we're like a tube of light, and you are as well. And every single person listening to this is the same. We're all beams of light, okay? And in our beam of light, we have bits and pieces of dust, let's say. And these bits of dust are our perceptions of belief. There are traumas. There are this has happened to me as a child. This happened to me in my epigenetic ancestral lineage. This is in birth or whatever it might be. So we're putting out that frequency to the world in our beam of light. We're still a beam of light, right? We've just got a bit of dust in it. So the more dust we have in our beam of light, the more we're going to see this old earth, which is the anger, the destruction, the genocide, as you speak about, and the wars and so on, and what's going on. So the job is inside. So my belief is we change, okay?
Yeah.
And the outer world changes. We can't fight fire. We have to heal within. And as we heal within, our light gets stronger, the dusty bits go off, and we get an expansion of that light. That's what I believe we're here for. I believe that expanding our light is why we're all here at this time of ascension and this great awakening. And I know, I see what you're saying from the perspective of this is happening in the world. And yes, of course, there need to be souls to help with that. But maybe that isn't someone's job. Yeah? Maybe your daughter has a different mission and her mission is to do something else with her light, as my mission is to do what I do with my light and yours is to do your light. Yeah?
I know, I do understand that. And also, the anger. We've seen so much anger over the last 4 years.
And that's our anger.
Yeah.
That's our anger. That's the volcano. That's the world erupting, isn't it?
It is.
And we're seeing volcanoes, literally, aren't we?
Yeah.
Tsunamis and all sorts of weather.
We are, but...
We are. Well, some of that is
it's
different places. But we are seeing that, and it's kind of
we're
like a
seeing
reflection.
DWs popping off all over the world.
We're seeing a lot. So we've all got that volcano within us. And we definitely haven't got that. We definitely have that volcano if we haven't done the work on ourselves. If we've done the work on ourselves, meaning, the inner work, that volcano is not about to erupt. So the more people, this is my opinion, the more people that do the inner work and see the world how they see themselves with love, the less we will have this in the world.
I agree with you completely. Because we are magnetic souls. Mm-hmm. We are, as I said, all connected, and we've just got to keep reaching out and spreading that light. And it's been very hard to keep that going.
Interesting,
I mean,
yeah.
I was very, very angry in 2020, 2021. I was just like, what are they doing? What are they doing to us? I was so livid.
But that fueled a fire for you, which was good. So that fueled you to
Yep.
go down the road that you're going down. And, I go down my road.
I want to come back to your road, and I want to come back to your guides, because you've talked quite a lot today about your guides and spirit, and there will be some people out there that don't have those guides, that or can't.
Well, they do, but
they
yeah.
can't connect to their guides.
Yeah, sure.
So tell us what a guide is, how you find your guide.
Wow, really good question. Well, I didn't really want mine, to be honest.
Because just sod off.
Yeah, I was like, no, I'm a scientist. So, of course, for me, it was easy for them to come in because I had no resistance to it, because I was just like, oh, I don't really believe it at all. So because I didn't believe it, it was easy for them to come in with no resistance. If I'd have gone, I really want to connect with my guides, what happens is that's from a place of real, like, dragging the energy. And of course, need, yeah. And so I hear this a lot from people. They're like, I want to do what you do. I want to be able to see them. And I do teach channeling and so on, and classes like that. But, it's about sitting with yourself and remembering who you are. I love this way of thinking about our guides. So 3 pillars of abundance. Okay. So we have know thyself, know that you're not on your own, and know why you're here. And why you're here doesn't have to be exactly why you're here, but just that there's a reason why you're here.
Yeah.
Right. So know thyself is, I'm a soul choosing to be human. Bit more than that, but that's essentially it. Know that you're not on your own is knowing that even if you physically are on your own, you are never on your own, and that you're always guided. And whether you believe in guides or angels or whatever you believe in, know that there is a bigger force that is always supporting you. And I truly believe that when we come in to forget, because we all do, right? We're born and we forget who we are.
Yep.
That's the point of it. So then throughout our life, we remember slightly who we are, or we have awakenings, and then we realize we can create. And then we go on the journey of, oh, I can get assistance here, ask and it is given, And I remember, I used to hear this in my head all the time, 'tis done, child. I never knew what that was. I thought it was rubbish, 'tis done, child, until I started working with my guides. And then I'd hear, 'tis done, child. I'm like, oh my God, you've been here all the time and I didn't know. Yeah? All those years of not knowing, when I was asking for things, I was like, oh, well, I'd really like this, or I'd really like to do that. 'Tis done, child, I'd hear. And now I know why. So it was kind of like letting me know that the whole time I had guidance with me. Now, your guides change depending on your frequency. So right now I'm working with a lot of galactic guides. And they're really coming in strongly. I mean, they're coming in to the point where they're bringing such wisdom through. So I'm stepping out of the way, which is something I find hard to do, let me tell you, being a scientist, right? So a control person. So I have to step out of the way and allow them to step in, not in a weird way, but allow them to blend and speak through me. Still in my voice, but perhaps slightly a different tone. And I've allowed that recently, and that's only happened recently. Doing things that expand our consciousness, like plant medicine and so on, is a really good way for us to really connect deeply with who we are. And I like to do that. That's the journey I like to go on. And I know you've done that as well.
Yes, I've only discovered it in the last year, and I'm a massive fan.
It's amazing. You have to get out of your way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really good for me.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't. You have to get out the way, because the medicine calls you when you're ready to hear it.
Exactly. It calls you, exactly. So this is the same thing with guides. It's almost like you have this calling. So if you're listening to this conversation with Philly and you've always wanted to know your guides, know they've always been there, And as you do the inner work, you start to get a sense that you can either see, feel, or hear, or just know, just knowing that they're there, or just knowing a voice that you have, and not in a weird way, that people talk about, but in a really loving way. You'll only get loving information from your guides. You won't get anything else. You'll never get anyone saying anything nasty to you, because that's just not true. And so it's always from a place of love. So then as you start to really heal those parts of you that were afraid, that felt that you were on your own, doing this all on your own in the world, you start to notice that this guidance comes through a lot stronger. And the frequency that you match will be the frequency of the guides. So as I raise my frequency more and more, I can see that different energies come in, and they're much more galactic frequencies and, ascended masters and so on. And that's not in a hierarchy. That's just in the sense of what they need to bring forward as information for people. And definitely if we're healing our body, especially with, diagnosis and so on, I have quite a few doctor guides that come in and work with me. Like Yusui, Dr. Yusui from Yusui Reiki recently came in and was talking to me as I'm working with a lady at the moment who has a diagnosis. And I'm hearing him and I'm seeing him, and he's chatting to me and telling me where I need to go with this particular person and the journey to go on with her, the particular processes that I have. Some of them are in the back of my book, actually, so people can, start working on themselves, which is really good. And so the guides will come in and they will show me into the body, but they'll also tell me what's going on. So they'll tell me the childhood trauma that it was. They'll tell me what I need to do to help that person release that fear. And it's so cool, because it's so fast track. It's not like you don't spend years in therapy, talking
something to death.
Which, is
helps
helpful.
some people.
Yes,
but,
opens a door.
Yeah. But it's a bit of I find therapy a bit of a weird one. My children wanted me to have it for a long time. And I'm going, why? I don't want to sit there and talk about something, and then just as we make a breakthrough and I'm going, oh my God, and then they go, well, your 55 minutes is up and I'll see you next week. And it's just like, where do you go and put this emotion? It's quite bizarre.
I think it used to be really, really helpful. I think now, we've changed. I think our frequency is a lot higher. There's more light with us.
We know that there are better solutions. It's I think, a lot of people that still want to go into that traditional therapy route, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, and everybody must do what they feel is right for them.
Yeah.
But, if you get to the point that you feel you need to do that, then you're almost at the point that you need to be exploring other techniques as well.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of people that come into my membership and my community that are therapists, that want to extend their understanding of taking their clients to another level, because they know that there's a door now. This doorway is blocked. You can't get any further.
No, I know.
You can't get any further with it. And we're really good. I was speaking to someone, actually a client of mine yesterday, and saying, we're so good at keeping these heart walls. Okay, and we've been really good at it. So we've got used to it. It's really protected us.
It's what they call the layers of the onion in traditional psychology. So all the layers there, the heart walls, absolutely solid, protecting the heart, you think.
And we're not going to talk about that, because that's been there and that's been a really good protection for us. So why would we access that through talking? That's unconscious. That's before we had language. That could be epigenetics. That could be past life, if we believe that. It could be anything. Yeah. So we can't access all of those, I call them, I have a process called the emotional wall. And sometimes people's walls are infinity up here, because, and they can't see what's over the wall because they're right behind the wall, stuck in this trauma and this perception of the world. So
and that's done as a protection, isn't it? They've built it up as a protection. But it means that trauma is still held somewhere in the body.
Yeah, exactly. And in the heart field. Yeah. And if heart math's done a lot of work, haven't they?
Yeah, I love heart maths.
And they've done a lot of work with heart coherence. And I truly believe that our heart is this electromagnetic field that essentially is putting that message out to the world. So if we've got all of these walls, you know, they're going to create a barrier for for the world that you know, that we've been talking about. So how can we expand our heart with love if we've got this wall that's anger? Yeah? So then we're going to see more of the stuff that's going on in the world, right?
Yeah. I think one of the strangest things for me was, as I said, I was very angry in 2020, 2021. And as I progressed and did more of this work, I don't really have that anger anymore. People still piss me off, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not that anger. And once you start to do the inner work, then you can get rid of it quite quickly, can't you?
Absolutely.
You know, there are niggles. There are things that are niggles. So I call those small T's. You know, you've got your big T's and your small T's, traumas. And, you know, and there will always be niggles in life for all of us. Cause
that's part of being human, right?
Yeah, it's part of this earth school.
Yeah.
If
we were completely perfect and nothing ever triggered us, what's the point of being here?
What's the point?
Yeah, we're expanding the whole time.
Boring.
It would be. Although maybe that's where we're going.
Maybe that is where we're going. Maybe that is where we're going, just to a world of peace and harmony, which...
Yeah, I'm not sure it would be in our lifetime.
No.
But, you know, it might be in our grandchildren's lifetimes.
Do you think it's that far off?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, we're working towards it. I believe, you know, we've got... The guides often show me the old earth and the new earth, and not that we're going to jump necessarily to a completely new earth physically, but that we are coming away from the fear, the guilt, the shame, you know, the drama in the world, and we're kind of siphoning into this golden earth, which is a higher frequency. And we can see it. I think we have one foot sometimes in the old earth and most of our feet in the new earth, you know, and we can hop. I had envisaged that it could possibly be in our lifetime. Possibly. Yeah. I mean, timelines shift and change all the time.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
I like to live in the moment of possibility. You know, I kind of get very unattached to anything these days. And I quite like it that way.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what I'm doing next year. Well, I know a couple of things I'm doing next year, but I kind of live
I'm
going to a wedding in Vietnam, which is lovely.
That's nice.
But apart from that, I don't have anything in my diary. And this year I have things in my diary, July, maybe into August. But I don't live in the kind of plan. I live in the place of the present and possibility.
And the moment.
Yeah. And it's a really nice place to be.
It is a really, really, really lovely place.
I
mean, I work around the clock. Which I know isn't good for me, but just I have so much work.
But it's what you're loving,
and I'm loving it, and we're getting information out, and it's great.
Yeah.
But my diary, if you look past 4 weeks, there is nothing. There's 2 little things for August written in, but it's just kind of bare, and yet. Every day when I wake up, that week gets chocker, or the following week, or maybe up to 3 weeks, but
so you
never
don't have to
anything
plan. So you don't have
that.
to plan, which is good.
Yeah.
And I'm the same, you know, things pop up, opportunities. And this is what happens, you know, this is for people to hear really, because it's really exciting, this. So when you really do this inner work and you become much more light, so your frequency is out in the world and your frequency is in coherence with your heart. So therefore you are living in the present more rather than the old future and the possible future. Yeah. And you're living in the present. So then opportunities come to you. So it's almost like, and your diary and my diary. So it's like, oh, do you fancy this? Yeah, that feels good. That feels like in alignment with my soul's mission. Yeah, that feels good. Yeah, I'll do that. And so that's how the world is.
Yeah,
we've got beautiful. This old way of living. This old way of living is there's something wrong with me. You know, there's something wrong with me. I've got to fight it. I've got to battle it. I've got to dig something up. to heal.
And I think there's a lot of that goes on, but there's also a lot of, FOMO is a really big thing.
Right,
Where
yeah.
people, I know
that's a good point.
my daughter, kind of has FOMO. Like, everybody's out and I'm not out. And there was a mum, I believe this to be a true story, when my daughters were at primary school, there was a mum that used to phone round on a Sunday evening just to check where everybody in her circle had been for the weekend, just to make sure she hadn't been left out of a party.
Okay, wow.
Because of this terrible FOMO.
Yeah.
Which must be so incredibly hard to live with.
Perception of rejection, right?
Yeah, perception of rejection, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
You've got a children's book.
I do.
En route. Tell us.
I'm actually
about
really excited
it.
about it. My kids are not so excited about it because they are featured in it along with all our animals. So it is very personal, but it's called The Guardian Wings. And I was given it one evening. So you know how it is. I was given this information one evening and I just channeled it. It's a beautiful book that is for children to remember who they are, the pure potential that they are, beautiful illustrations. And I'm excited because there's a guide in there, there's an angel in there, there's,
Is there a spirit animal in there?
There's our animals in there.
I love
and they are
all,
I'll let you know. Or you can have a copy when it comes out. But essentially, I use Balboa Press, which is the division of Hay House, because that's who published my first book after winning that.
After winning the competition, the Hay House writing competition.
Yeah. So I decided, because they were so brilliant, I decided to get them to do it. So I'm really pleased with it, and it'll be out very soon. So hopefully by the time this comes out, it'll be out on Amazon, which would be great.
And then we can put it in the show notes, but we can't put it in the show notes unless it's out.
Yeah.
So
it's called The Guardian Wings.
Really exciting.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? Where can they find their work? And I know you have not just the books, but you have a lot to offer.
Yeah. So my name, Susan Kennard, is basically where you'll find me. So my website is Susan Kennard. My YouTube channel is Susan Kennard. But I am offering a free chat with me. So if anyone wants a free discovery session, I'm sure you'll put the link in the show notes. But you can go to my website, and on the front page of susankennard.co.uk, there's a golden box and it says book a free discovery session with Susan. Feel free to do that. I know sometimes when people embark on deep journeys, and when you work with me, it's not just, touching the surface. We are going in deep.
Way deep.
We're going in deep. Yeah.
I'm almost going to start itching just talking to you.
Healing the separation, of course, with the itching.
Yeah.
The cortex part of the brain, healing the separation. All right.
Yeah.
So that's just a little nugget for people. So if they have eczema or anything like that, know that, that is actually the body healing separation, which is really cool. So essentially my YouTube channel, which, I love, because every Friday I have 5-minute frequency tune up with the guides. So you can sit with me on a Friday morning and just experience 5 minutes of working with whatever. It might be channeling, it might be a process, it might be meditation, whatever I get guided. I love that, and everyone loves that. They do. And often I go live on there as well. I'm on social. It's all the same. It's all my name, Susan Kennard. It's all my brand, But essentially I run Soul's Mission membership, which is now called the Soul's Ascension membership, because we're going to the next level and the next level of our consciousness. And I absolutely love that. I'm an astrologer as well, so intuitive astrologer. So if anyone's interested in that, I do astrology as well.
I know, and I love it when you give me a
That's
reading.
the science.
And you rock up. It is a science,
Yeah.
and you rock up and go, and the sun and the moon, because I'm not an astrologer, and you know, kind of at all. And you tell me, you rocked up here today and told me exactly what was happening with the celestial plane.
The day we're recording.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh my God, I love you.
And I love you too, Philly. But I do think mission is important. You're living your mission. I'm absolutely 100% living my mission. Mission changes, and I think that's an important thing to say, is that people think, well, why am I here? Well, actually, it's not just for one thing. Like, your mission and your purpose evolves and changes, and you never really know where it's going. And I think, when you look at your history and your background, you look at mine, I worked in child protection, I worked with veterans, I was a platform medium, all led me to be a public speaker and a teacher and someone who works with trauma and disease. I never knew that that's where it was going. And so you don't really know where your mission's going.
You don't know. But I look back now at my life, just this life. I'm not going into past lives, but I'm just looking back at this life.
Yeah.
And I can see why everything that I've done to bring me here.
Yeah.
You know,
and everyone can look at that, can't they? That's listening can say, you know, they might not have found exactly their coming home to who they are, okay? But if they look back at their life, they can see how far they've come. And I think we forget to look at that, don't we?
There's a great saying by St. Francis of Assisi that I was reminded of recently because, as I said, I do work far too hard. And I can't, I'm not going to do the exact quote, but it is, when you climb up the mountain, always remember to stop and look back to see how far you've come.
Yes.
You don't want to get out of breath. You don't want to keep fighting up to the top. You've got to enjoy the process.
Yeah, living in the present.
And living in the present.
Yeah.
And that's something that I am just beginning to try and do, enjoy the process. And then...
You're doing such good work, you know, that you're going to be... The gratitude is coming to you and you can feel that.
I don't do it for gratitude at all.
No, but it comes energetically to you. And as you're putting it out, your heart's out in the world, which it is, the gratitude comes back. So therefore you have gratitude for the world. Yeah. And that is a beautiful experience.
I feel very privileged to be here in this position.
Yeah.
But, you know, I have a lovely podcast studio because I built houses before in a previous life. I can sit in front of a mic, although I couldn't at the beginning because I was terrified. But I did actually once train as an actor. You know, and it's just like, why is the universe, spirit,
as a platform medium, I never thought I'd be
all of this.
I never thought I'd be channeling, you know, galactic guides and doing light language and everything. I never thought that was ever part of a thing.
I never thought I'd be having these conversations. I would have thought we were absolutely bloody mad.
Yeah. But it is great.
It is amazing. We live in very exciting times. And I know from the emails that I get that some of you don't think the times are exciting. Some of you are quite scared of them and nervous about what the future holds. Some of you feel alone in this journey. And I just want to say to you, you are not alone. Reach out. There are people like the beautiful Susan Kennard all around the world that are here to help people. There's tons of free resources. There's, you know, find your tribe because together we are building the new world. Susan Kennard, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Philly. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
it was
bless
fantastic.
You, lovely.
Bless you. Thank you.